clients like Amitabh Bachchan and Sachin Tendulkar, members at the club, and they have their homes there.
I want to know the whole story behind such a huge 900-acre development.
The golf courses that India had were mainly either the army golf courses or the government golf courses, and there was no housing along that.
Is it money-making project or is it passion project just for leaving a mark?
If you're in the business of business, you cannot do anything for passion. It has to make money.
There's a normal building and there's a green building. What will be the differentiated features of both buildings?
Let's say it's a 1,000 square feet office. We say this is what electricity bill for air conditioning is. And this is what it would have been had you been in a regular building. And the difference is almost 40%.
Is there anything that can be done to an existing building to make it more green and sustainable?
Unfortunately, all our facility management companies today in India have become real estate agents. So they don't do facility management besides parking and security and housekeeping.
Want you to explain the basics of ESG and why companies should be more compliant towards it.
SEBI has mandated that top 100 have to be ESG compliant. Now they are saying top 1,000 will be ESG compliant.
Talking about how Savvy Group has become a part of the policy formulations for the Gift City to being the leading developer in the Gift City.
There is district cooling in Gift City, which is probably one of the first developments of this kind. You get chilled water supplied to your building. It's plug and play. The power is plug and play. Waste management is plug and play.
What kind of leadership do you pursue? Hello everyone. So today with us we have a very special guest, Mr. Sinha, who is the founder and managing director of the Savvy Group. It is one of the leading developer firms in Ahmedabad, also doing development in Bombay. They have built a 900-acre Kensville golf and country club and has a very good initiative, Savvy Greens, which focuses on making the real estate fraternity and their projects greener and sustainable. And also, he has been the chairman of the Indian Green Building Council and also was the founding member of it. I would like you to welcome on the Speaking Real Estate podcast, and thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to having this conversation with you as well.
My pleasure, Krish. Thank you so much for inviting me, and welcome to Ahmedabad. I hear this is your first series in Ahmedabad, so that's really very nice, and I congratulate you on a wonderful idea. This is really something which is very interesting. Real estate needs more young blood like you, and we want to talk more about real estate, and I think we are doing some amazing work all over the country. And
thank you. You are too kind with your words. So we'll start off with the education journey and then followed by that with your career journey.
Okay, so as far as Savvy is concerned, it's a very interesting story, probably right out of the Three Idiots movie. We had three friends from college. We were in the LD Engineering College in Ahmedabad, and हम तीनों का roll number आगे पीछे था, and that's how we have studied together. We have been friends, like I said, since then. And then I moved to the US after college to pursue my post-graduation, and then I ended up working for almost 10 years in the US, got married, had kids, and eventually in 1996 decided to come back and join Jakshay and Jigish and start a company to make buildings in Ahmedabad. Why real estate? Because that's the only thing we knew to do. We were civil engineers, and fortunately at that time the market was really hungry for a lot of buildings, a lot of scope for development in Ahmedabad, and so that is where we started in 96. And very interestingly, what used to happen in Ahmedabad, which probably happens in other cities also across the country, is the central business district of the city shifted every 10 years. And in 96, in the earlier, in the 60s and 70s in Ahmedabad, there used to be what is known as the Relief Road. And then in the 70s and 80s, there was Ashram Road. 80s and 90s, there was CG Road. And that is when in 1996, when we first printed our brochure, we made the first commercial building on SG Highway, which was called Chapat 1. There were no other commercial buildings, not even any high-rise buildings on SG Highway in those days. And when we made our brochure in those days, we had a tagline which said that, like I said, 60s, it was Relief Road and the Ashram Road and CG Road. And now in 2000, it will be SG Highway. And this was in 96. And in the next 5 years, this whole SG highway was saturated with high-rise buildings, and a lot of them commercial buildings. But when we first started the building, people thought we were crazy. And who is going to come buy an office space? It is all jungle here, and there's no other development. Rajpath Club was the only other building on this side of the highway.
Savvy Group is one of the first movers in a lot of things. So commercial building on the SG highway is one of the first things that you did as a first mover. So one thing that really clicked me right now is that a partnership among three friends doesn't last long in the nature of doing a business for a very long term. And touch wood to this thing that it's been more than 2 decades that this is there today and continues to be so. What is the secret to such a long partnership with friends?
I think the one thing that the bottom line that we've always believed in is that the company comes first. And everything if you're doing, whenever there's a confusion about what is the right decision, I think the one thing that the three of us have always believed in is what is good for the company. And as long as you keep that in mind, and that essentially means what's good for the customer actually, is will this decision be in my favor, or will it be in favor of the well-being or the reputation of the company and hence the customer. And that tenet has actually stood us well throughout all these years. The advantage of having three is that there's no confusion in decision making. If there's two, you can argue. When there's three, it's always a decision is made. So that has also helped us a lot.
Can we talk about your journey of Savvy Group in the early 2000s and 2010s?
So, honestly, when we started our business in 96, in late 90s, early 2000, the marketplace in Ahmedabad was quite saturated, and there had been probably most of the players were old timers who had been in the business for 15, 20 years. People had built 100 plus buildings, and they were large developers. And so we had very high competition, but there was still scope because newer areas were developing. It was a risk. It was definitely a risk because we were competing against very large players. We were three kids out of college and did not have too much bandwidth, did not have first generation of developers. Nobody in our family had ever been in the real estate business. So we had no exposure in that sense. And we didn't have anything to fall back upon either. But what really stood apart for what we were trying to do were very simple, basic things of, one was the passion to do something good for the skyline of Ahmedabad, is to make buildings which are nice, clean, straight line, functional, affordable. So I think that was something that was very inherent in what we wanted to do. We did not want to make complicated, convoluted, over-designed buildings. We want to make nice, clean buildings. I'll give you one example which is very interesting, which I always quote. So if you looked at any of the buildings in that era in Ahmedabad, which is probably true in a lot of buildings, even in old Bombay, if you see, is that the front of the building was always a pawn shop. There's always an ice cream shop or a tailor shop or some retail, which is, in those days, of course, there was no malls. So there was always this little mom and pop kind of shops and retail that was happening in the front of a building. The entrance to the office building was always from the side. You took this little lane, you had to weave through scooters and car parks. And then when you entered the building, there was this series of electrical meters, and you had this sliding lift with a sliding shutter, and the panka pichkari on the stairs. And that was a typical entrance of a good office building. And majority of your clients were the 10, 12 floors of offices. But for the sake of the two retail, which actually fetched you a lot of money, everybody compromised on the entrance of the building. So we decided that we will dedicate a 2,000 square feet area on the ground floor and give the offices an entrance from the front of the building. We will not do this compromise because that is our clientele, and this was a new area. We wanted to attract people to come and shift their offices on SG Highway. So we actually loss, we actually considered that we will do a little less business in the retail area, and we devoted a double height floor. So almost we gave up 2 floors of retail to build a nice foyer. And we made air-conditioned foyer. We put some nice sofas. We had these automatic elevators. We clad it with marble and made it look like a nice entrance to a office building like it should be. Now that's the norm today. I mean, in your generation has not seen those kind of buildings, so you don't know the difference. But that in Ahmedabad in those days was something that the concept of foyer did not exist. And so that was the first Shapat one. Even today, if you go look at it, it still looks well-maintained, clean, neat. And the entrance plaza of the office is respectable. Where, as opposed to, like I told you, it used to be a sham. And even the most prestigious people who had offices in these kind of buildings had to still come through the same kind of entrance. So that was a unique thing that we did in our first building. And that was, like I said, it worked out.
Losing upon those retail shops might have cost you a loss in certain amount. But did it give a premium to the office spaces considering that was not there?
It didn't give us a premium because in Ahmedabad, you can't sell anything at a premium. You have to sell at what your neighbor sells at, right? It's it's the same story today. So you don't get much premium in terms of you can't really ask for more because you've done something nice. But it does
were the
build your
prices of
reputation.
commercial places at that time?
I don't even remember now. I think the offices were less than 1,000 rupees a square feet. And retail probably, I don't know.
And today it might be 10, 12,000.
Today it is, it would be at least 10,000.
At least 10x appreciation in 20 years.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Yeah.
So Savi's group focus was on developing any particular asset class like commercial, residential.
We started with commercial. Our first few buildings were commercial buildings, but no, we've been pretty sector agnostic in that sense. We built everything. We built houses, we built homes, we built apartments, we built hospitals, we built hotels. We've built a golf course, like I told you. We have a residential community on a golf course. We've built a sports center. We have built, so we've been pretty agnostic in that sense. We've tried we've built townships, bungalows. So whatever works, we are in the business of real estate, and anything that is in real estate is right.
So talking about the golf course, would like to move to the Kensville Golf and Country Club. I want to know the whole story behind even getting the idea. What was the birth for getting that idea of also developing such a huge 900-acre development plan?
So I'll tell you, Krish, life is all about chance encounters. Everything that happens in life comes out of some coincidence, some chance encounter, somebody you meet, something happens, right? And that's how life happens. You can't strategize things. So I don't think we ever had a strategy that one day we'll build a golf course. It came out of somebody in one of our buildings had this vision. And the gentleman actually came from Kenya. And hence the name Kensville. And he had this vision that obviously Kenya has a lot of golf culture. And Gujarat did not have any 18-hole championship course at that point of time. There was one golf course in Baroda, which was a 10-hole course in the Maharaja's Palace. And there were a few, the army had a golf course here. But nobody had built a 18-hole course because it takes a lot of land. So this gentleman had a vision, and he tried acquiring land and making a golf course, and obviously did not have any real estate background, but had the vision. So the credit goes to him. But then eventually he got frustrated with the idea, could not make much headway in that. And he approached us because he was in one of our buildings. So he said, somebody says to him, why don't you go and talk to these guys? So they came to us, they talked to us about it. And we thought it was an interesting idea. Again, we had a debate and whether we should do this or not. And I remember we were sitting in a car. We had to go meet the people to kind of say yes or no. And like I said, because we were three, the decision was made that two of us voted in favor, and hence we said yes. And that started the process. Of course, it was a very, very long, arduous task of acquiring land. We had now the project is almost 900 acres, but we started with like 10 acres.
It's been with time that you have been acquiring more land.
We acquired land for, now we are not, but we acquired land for over 10 years.
This started in which year?
I would say it started in 2005. We started building the golf course 2003. 2005, 2006 is when and again, like golf did not exist. Nobody knew what golf was, and nobody obviously did not know what golf housing was, because it was even in India, they're not, actually I remember very clearly that we went to see the Eagleton golf course in Bangalore, because that was the only residential golf course in India at that point of time. Even DLF had not been built, the one in Delhi. So the golf courses that India had were mainly either the army golf courses or the government golf courses, and there was no housing along that. So we had designed a housing community, because the economics of a golf course only comes from the real estate. The golf courses per se don't make money. So we had done some research, and then we had this team of architects, and we took them to several golf courses across the world. We took them to South Africa, we took them to England, we took them to Kenya to look at how to design a golf course, how to design a golf club, how do you design a plotting community, because nobody had done it before. So that was a very interesting exercise, and we did that. And then 2005 we built the first first. I think we started 2003. 2005 the golf course was built, and then the first thing we did was we organized a very high level. There in the golf circuit, there is the what is known as the European Tour. There is the US PGA Tour and the European Tour, which are the internationally, and the Asian Tour now, of course. So we hosted a European Challenge Tour tournament where 200 participants from international golfers played at Kensville, and hence we established a benchmark that this is an international level golf course. We managed to get Jeev Milkha Singh, who's India's #1 golfer, who's son of Milkha Singh. He gave us a signature to the golf course. It was designed as a Jeev Milkha signature golf course. It's the first Indian signature on a golf course. And so that was at the beginning. And we set a benchmark, and then we have clients like Amitabh Bachchan and Sachin Tendulkar as members at the club, and they have their homes there. So yeah, that was the beginning of that journey.
How was the vision expanding with time, and how was the thinking getting developed?
Yeah, Kensville is a very unique project. Like I was telling you before, most real estate projects, you are associated with the building for maybe 3, maybe 4 years, and then you move on. You hand over the building to the RWA, and then there's very little involvement of the developers in the building, unless you maintain. So from the commercial buildings, we still maintain, like this one or the few of the Shapat buildings, but that's purely as a service to our clients. Kensville is one of our flagship projects, where because we have such a large parcel of land, and because it is one of our passion projects, where we are committed to developing it over the next probably another decade or so at least. We are launching new phases every year or so. We come into the market with a new development. So we are now launching a new gated community within Kensville, which is called Saras 2. We had a development like that about 5-6 years ago. And then we also have about 100 plots that we put in the market every year. But what is our biggest commitment to Kensville is the community. And we plant something like 30,000 to 40,000 trees and shrubs every year. We have created an arboretum of trees. It's a very unique environment where we have large Miyawaki forest that we have developed. So our tagline is Flora, Fauna, and Families. We come up with a coffee table book for the flora and fauna of Kensville every couple of years. And there's about 400 homes at Kensville right now. There are 400 families that come and stay there, mainly on the weekends, though few people do live there. We have a large team of almost 300 people that work at Kensville, and we employ mainly people from the neighboring villages. So it's also a great community connect for us. And a lot of the kids who started working with us have become very keen golfers. They participate in national tournaments, the caddy golfers. They know the language, they're disciplined, they understand the game, they teach the game, they're great coaches. So yeah, that's how the community has developed, and it's a long-term play for us.
A project like Kensville, which is about for like 3 to 4 decades or even more, how does the cash flow look like? Is it money-making project or is it passion project just for leaving a mark?
No, you cannot do. I mean, if you're in the business of business, you cannot do anything for passion. It has to make money. It has. The project has obviously broken even. We have cash flows which keep coming from subscription and membership. We have a country club which we have built, which has 75 rooms, which is run by Club Mahindra. So they manage the
Hospital.
building the hospital. I mean, the hospitality part of it. So we get revenues from that. Members give subscription for the golf course. But like I said, the golf course will never make money. Its own. If it breaks even, that's great. The community has to, the real estate has to make money, and then the subscription, the maintenance, all of that has to make money, which is how it is sustained. And then we have other recreational elements to it. We are building more club facilities. There's club memberships. Those kind of things will happen. But yes, it has to be a profitable project. Otherwise, we would never do it. So it is profitable. The valuation of the project it is a long-term game. So it's not like making a building and getting out of it. So in that sense, it will be a long-term asset. But when you're holding this kind of land, it cannot be a short-term play anyway.
You all making such kind of project and also seeing a lot of books on golf around here. I want to know few things about the golf sport. How is the sport like and how is it different from cricket or football?
So golf is a very unique sport. What is changing in India today is two things. One is that it has become very, very affordable to play golf. The whole impression that it's a very elitist game, expensive to play, it's changing because the golf course. You know how many? There are about a dozen golf courses in Ahmedabad. Most of them are 9-hole or smaller, but there are 2 championship courses in Ahmedabad. Gujarat now has, I think, 3 or 4 very good courses. Ahmedabad itself has, like I told you, about 6-7 very good courses, 2 18-hole championship courses. And all of these are real estate projects. They are not government or army courses. These are all new courses which have come up. And the key is the residential development around it. So the golf course acts as a hook, and it also gives you a lot of wonderful green environment, the breathing space, the living conditions are very, very sustainable and green. So that is a great community that comes up on all of these developments. The sport is becoming very popular with youngsters. If you come to Kensville on a weekend, you'll see about 100 people playing, and majority of them will be younger than 30 years old. Also, what is really interesting is a lot of Japanese and a lot of Koreans who have industries around. They all come from like hundreds of kilometers to come and play golf in these courses. So it's becoming a very international sport.
Coming to you being a civil engineer student to moving to becoming a developer and also developing this golf course, then giving birth to Savvy Greens, an initiative led by you. I want to know from where did the interest of building such kind of firm come from?
So like I said, another chance encounter. We were making a building, Shapat 5, which is a building next door. We had a mandate to build a hotel. And we were talking to some of the international chains who were interested in coming to Ahmedabad, and we wanted to obviously have a operator come on board because we did not have the bandwidth to operate hotels. And so Intercontinental Group was the one that we were talking to, the Crown Plaza Hotel. And they had a mandate to build all their buildings as, in those days, it used to be, hotels still follow that, what they call the Green Globe standards. So we got curious about what is it. And of course, we had to build it because it was mandated. So we got to explore what is Green Globe and how does it work. And though it is specifically for the hospitality industry, we thought we should make the entire building green. And Shapat 5 was the first green building in Gujarat. And we were very fortunate that we had the right kind of architects and right kind of consultants who helped us do this. But in the process, we also realized that there is not enough skill set available and not enough knowledge available to design sustainable green buildings. And so over the years, we have that was the genesis of Savvy Greens, is that we started developing, and then we committed that we will make only green buildings. So all our buildings since then have been green buildings, and we will only build green. What that does is, one, like I said, we don't get much mileage in terms of price, but definitely establishes our reputation as a conscious, sustainable, environment-friendly developer. And then we started developing our own SOPs internal for the company to work on how do you design green buildings. When we started doing that, we realized a lot of our friends and family, people, other developers in Ahmedabad were also interested in this, and we were trying to help them do the same thing. And that became a business out of that, and we decided to form a small company within the group, which is called Savvy Greens. And we have now a fairly respectable clients across the country, actually quite a few international clients also, where we are doing all sectors from warehousing to factories to apartments to hotels, hospitals, any buildings, including railway stations, metro stations. So yeah, we are, and we work with any kind of building and any kind of sustainable solution that is required in the building sector.
So what kind of services does the Savvy Greens provide, and how does it make a difference to the normal building?
So Savvy Greens, we like to call ourselves your sustainability partner. So depending, and it's it's a new area, but it's also a need now, and it's becoming pretty much the norm now. When we first started making green buildings, people thought, what is a green building? People had no idea. Today, you spoke to Chitrak earlier, and they are committed to making only green buildings also. A lot of the young developers are now committed to making green buildings. There is also a lot of policies that have come into place across the country which is promoting green buildings. Very soon, it will probably be mandatory that all buildings have to be green. So we have, what we do is essentially handholding in any kind of sustainability need that a developer has. And when we say developer, I mean the built environment, any kind of built environment. You see, the problem is that India has committed to being net zero by 2070 and 50% reduction in our carbon emissions by 2047. If we have to do that, it cannot be done by wishful thinking. It has to be driven by policy. It has to be driven by industry. Real estate construction industry emits 40%, almost 40% of all the greenhouse gases. So if we are responsible for 40% of those emissions, how can real estate not be driven in that direction? And how can we not worry about it? So it has to happen where it will become a mandatory policy very soon. But even before that, there's a lot of conscious developers who are now doing this. ESG is becoming a reality. ESG is becoming mandatory now. SEBI is mandating top 100 companies now, but it's becoming top 1,000 companies, listed companies, to be ESG compliant. So a lot of work is happening in that area. And because it is a revolving field, we at Savvy Greens have to keep adapting to what is happening in the market, what is new, what can be done, what is possible in India, what is not possible in India. And we have a collaboration with a lot of international firms that we work with. So we are able to also tweak the requirements, suggest what is good for a company, what is viable for them to do. So we like to call ourselves like your one-point solution for anything to do with sustainable development.
To make a building green, does it have to be in a very initial planning phase, or an existing constructed building can also do something and change something to make the building more sustainable and green?
So both. Ideally, it should be designed green, and it's much easier if the building is designed green. So majority of the new construction that is happening, especially in progressive markets like Ahmedabad, are getting to be green. What is very interesting, Krish, is that most of the regulations across the board, if you follow the National Building Code, if you follow Maharashtra state regulation, if you follow the Gujarat GDCR, just following the GDCR now, because the policies have become so progressive, you will end up making a green building. You may or may not get it certified. So you may not, because there was no advantage to getting certified so far because there's no market value to it. People were not doing it. But typically, if you follow the GDCR, you do make a green building. Simple example like fly ash brick. Now in Ahmedabad, because we have a thermal power station, fly ash brick is cheaper than red bricks. So why would anybody make buildings with red bricks? Red bricks consume the top layer of the top 5 feet of the earth, which is the most fertile layer of soil. Once that is gone, you cannot replace it. So fly ash bricks is easily available, is cheaper. Now people are making blocks. People are using different technologies to make buildings with fly ash bricks. And hence the economy is changing. The products are available. The economy of green has changed dramatically in the last 10 years. Today, it would be stupid not to build green. You would have to make a conscious effort to make a non-green building.
So, if there is a normal building and there's a green building, what will be the differentiated features of both buildings?
Several. So, you have to, for a new building, like I said, you have to look at the sun path analysis of the building. So, you have to orient it correctly so that you get in maximum light but minimum heat in the building. You have to look at the water consumption. You have to look at the materials that you're using. You have to look at how you will restore the earth that you excavate. You have to look at what kind of recycled material you can use in the building. How much fly ash can you design into the concrete mix? What kind of steel can you use? If you're using glass, then what kind of glass? Can you bring in maximum light and reflect and not bringing the heat so that the air conditioning is more efficient? Very interestingly, in a normal, if you looked at any normal, if you called up a consultant or a vendor and said, okay, I want to air condition this room, the normal thumb of rule, which has been industry practice for ages, would be maybe 1 ton per 100 square feet. If you design a building, your consultant will give you like 200 square feet or 300 square feet per ton. You know what my efficiency in Shapat 5 is? 700 square feet
in the building common areas.
No, in the building, in the entire building. In the entire building, the efficiency today that I'm getting out of the chiller that is installed in the building is almost 600 to 700 square feet per ton. Whereas the most consultants or the most vendors will still design it at 300 or 200 square feet per ton. Imagine the efficiency that you can get. And this not only reduces your electricity consumption, but also your electrical load.
So is it a different system like a VRF or something? That is why?
So there is multiple systems and there's multiple options, but it's all about designing it correctly in the very beginning. What happens is that developers sometimes don't pay attention to these kind of things. And hence they look at the bigger picture and they look at the capex of requirement for building a building, but you don't look at how can I make this better. But value engineering doesn't come into the HVAC part of it because nobody understands it. And we don't pay attention to it. And like I said, it affects your air conditioning, it affects your electrical load, hence your cabling cost goes down, your meter cost goes down, your requirement of electricity from the electric supply company goes down, hence your capital payment to them goes down. But what it majorly impacts is the operational OPEX of the building, which developers are not really concerned with because we sell and we move out. Now that the game is changing, it's becoming more rental based, people are retaining buildings, people are operating it, developers are interested in the operational cost of it. So we have started looking at the life cycle analysis of buildings, which we were not interested in typically. And today I can tell you, for example, what happens in one of our green buildings is when we we manage the building and we manage the camp. When we send out, because it's a chiller-based building and every unit has a BTU meter, so they are built for the chilled water supply to their office. And then they can install their FCs and HUs and manage the building. System in Gift City is even more advanced. Let me get to that in a second. I'm talking about the regular building which is right next door, Shapat 5. Which is a green building, which has a chiller. What we do is when we send them an electricity bill for the month for the air conditioning, we give them the invoice and then we have, so let's say it's 1,000 square feet office or 1,500 square feet office. We say, this is what your electricity bill for air conditioning is. And this is what it would have been had you been in a regular building. And the difference is almost 40%. 40% cheaper just by virtue of being in a good green building. Air conditioning cost is 40% less. Now, if you think about it, that's almost 8 to 9 rupees a square feet. If it is a 70 rupees or 60 rupees rental, you're saving 10% just by virtue of being in a good building. So this is how you build your reputation and give the customer something to be happy about, even 10, 15 years, 20 years after the building.
Makes an impact after a decade, which people will realize when?
Well, people will keep benefiting from. And in these kind of buildings, in a high-performance building, the efficiency goes on increasing as the building gets older because the envelope is there. Now, the efficiency of the chiller is much higher. And if it is maintained well, it gives you returns for a long, long time. So the benefit goes to the user. So I, as a developer, may not have made money out of it. But even today, all the clients who have ever been in this building will now not go to any other building because they save 10% cost just in air
That's
conditioning.
just air conditioning. There are many.
That's just air
The
conditioning.
whole-
I'm not talking about the
This is
other
very
costs.
interesting and very unsaid in this industry. If there's an existing building which is already out there built, are there any things, is there anything that can be done to an existing building to make it more green and sustainable?
Yes, it can be done. It must be done. Now, the challenge with our country is that 90% of our real estate is already built,
Yes.
right? And there is nobody's looking at that. How do we reduce that carbon footprint? And I have been telling this to all the facility managers, every seminar I go to. Unfortunately, all our facility management companies today in India have become real estate agents. So they don't do facility management besides parking and security and housekeeping. If you look at any of the RWAs, for example, right? Any building in Bombay, for example, they are sitting on a huge corpus. That corpus can only be used for the development and maintenance of the building. You can't even invest in mutual funds. So that becomes a fixed deposit, which is there, which goes on increasing every year because you get transfer fee, you get whatever subscription, maintenance, whatever else. If somebody went to these RWAs in your building, for example, and said, okay, this is what your annual expense of maintaining this building is, which includes your pumps, which includes your common areas, which includes whatever else, your biggest cost is your pumping of the water. And I can make it 20% more efficient. Give me 5%. Wouldn't you do it? Nobody's doing this because nobody has the secretary, chairman, secretary don't have the time. कौन करेगा ये सब झंझट? If the company comes in and does that, that's a great amount of money to be made out of this. It's a great business opportunity. And there are far better equipment available today. All you have to do is to change the bulbs into LED bulbs. You have to change the motor into a more efficient motor. You have to come up with a better supply system. You have to manage the water supply better. You have to manage the recycling better. I'll give you a small example. We have a township project called Swaraaj, where we have a waste management system. What we have done is a very simple thing, which is mandatory in AMC now. We started giving 2 dustbins in every household, a blue and a green for organic, which is food waste, and the plastic and glass waste. Now the garbage man goes and collects these 2 dustbins. Segregated waste comes into the common area. We make compost right there at the site. The compost is sold back in small plastic packets to the residents for all their indoor plants at 10 rupees a packet, right? All the segregated plastic, pasti, bottles, because it is not mixed with the food waste, it is clean. That gets sold to the recycling companies. The society actually makes money out of this. Every month, they make 30,000-40,000 rupees, which goes towards the salaries of the staff. And the kids are very happy with this. We did a workshop with the kids, and the kids are promoting it in such a big way. It's been operational for the last 10 years. So today, AMC has made it mandatory for segregation of waste. But we've been doing it for so many years. And so many societies should be doing this. It's a very easy thing to do. And once it becomes a norm in a society, it'll keep happening.
There's a huge lack of awareness for these things.
Correct. There's a lack of awareness and people don't see the benefit of doing it. I mean, imagine if you get a bag of compost in your on your doorstep saying, use this for your potted
People will
plants.
do. So now, in these existing buildings, normally, is the amount, the money required to make these changes happen is a lot, or it's very nominal?
No, it's not a lot. Like I said, nobody will give it to you if there's extra expense. You have to demonstrate it as a savings. If you replace your motor and if you can consume less energy and my electricity bill goes down by 20%, I'm willing to share up a cost of that. Same thing with LED bulbs, and it's a very basic things. You install a few solar panels, your common area lighting becomes free. Today, Gujarat is probably one of the few states which have a very progressive solar policy. Every household, at least independent bungalows, practically you will see has solar panels. I get 0 electricity bill in my home. 0. I don't pay electricity charges. My terrace has solar panels. Reverse metering is the norm in Ahmedabad Municipal Corporation. practically throughout the year, I don't pay any electricity bill. Full air conditioning, full water supply, and this is the norm. There is a capex involved, but the capex pays back in 2.5, 3 years. So if you have an independent bungalow, at least for bungalows, it works wonders. If you have a terrace which is like 1,000, 1,500 square feet, for a family of 4, you get free electricity. Yeah, and this policy is very successful in Gujarat. Of course, the advantage here is that there are still bungalows which,
Want to get a little bit technical into the whole green building and sustainability. What kind of certifications are there for buildings to go out there and get it?
The US LEED and IGBC were the two most prevalent certifications that existed. A lot of the multinational companies want USGBC LEED certification, which is what Bank of America wanted when we built our first building in Gift City. IGBC has become very, very popular. It's probably IGBC and GRIA are the two large footprints in India. IGBC has almost a 12 billion square feet green footprint in India. GRIA is a little smaller. But today there are multiple different options now. There is WELL certification, there is EDGE, like I said, there is IGBC, and IGBC has ratings for every category of building, from homes to factories to metro stations to warehousing to even townships and cities and villages. So there's a category of certification for every kind of building, every kind of topography, geographical areas, depending on the climate conditions. So it's very, very Indianized, very indigenous, very accurate systems that are there now. People, like I said, used to not get certification because they did not see the mileage in it. Today that has changed. Today you will see a lot more buildings with certification proudly displayed at the entrance, in their hoardings, in their paper advertisements, in their social media. So it is changing a lot.
What does the developer get by having that certificate?
It demonstrates to the customer that they are conscious about the environment. It demonstrates to the customer that they care about your well-being, your wellness, your comfort. People are very, very conscious about that anymore, especially post-COVID. The awareness, sensitivity of the customer towards well-being, health and well-being has dramatically changed. For example, like I said, Chapat 5 was the first green building. Now, we did a survey. Dun & Bradstreet occupies an office floor in the building, and they did a survey just before COVID on the number of sick days that their employees had in their office in Chapat 5 versus a non-green building somewhere else in some other city. And it was almost 60% lower, only because of the quality of air. Because we have treated fresh air in the building, so the chances of infection, chances of cross-contamination, all of that is much lower. Also, we have done a very interesting study. We did a collaboration with the Denmark Confederation of Industries, IGBC, and IIM Ahmedabad. We looked at the impact of a green building indoor environment on the productivity of the employees. And we have a very interesting report. I'll share that with you. We've done a first survey of about 50 buildings. We're now doing a nationwide survey, taking the study forward. And the summary of the report is that 1% increase in the green index of a building leads to almost a 7 to 8% increase in the employee's engagement, in his vitality, in his productivity, in his well-being. And if that so what we are trying to do now is to correlate that to the bottom line of the company. So if a company comes into a building and there'll be an app that we want to make, and you can say that this is what my green index is today, and you can follow these 4, 5, 6 measures. If you take that, if you will increase your bottom line productivity by this percentage. And if we can demonstrate that, our job is done. Then we don't have to sell green buildings. I honestly believe there should be no other buildings. There should only be green buildings. So we shouldn't have to be promoting green buildings. Everything should be green.
You have been the founding member and chairman of the Indian Green Building Council. So what is the purpose and objective of this council?
So the purpose was twofold. One was to create awareness about green buildings amongst the consumer, amongst developers. and amongst the government. But secondly and majorly, the idea was to create or advocate policy at different state levels for promoting green buildings. So we have been working very closely with governments all across the country, and there are several states, including Gujarat, which incentivize green building development. For example, Punjab gives you additional FSI, West Bengal, Punjab, even Maharashtra gives you additional FSI for building green. Gujarat gives a rebate in your fees, purchase FSI for making a green building. And now there are practically, I think, about 15, 20 states across the country that promote green building by some mechanism of either a purchase FSI, FAR, or additional FAR, or reduction in duty, stamp duty, reduction in property tax, several
I think
incentives.
so. There is only discounting and getting back from making a green building.
Absolutely. And today, like I told you before, you would have to make an effort to make a non-green building. And also, I believe it's not even more expensive. Today, it is probably the same cost. If you look at the impact on the environment, or if you look at the operational expense of a green building, it's cheaper to make a green building. We sometimes don't look at it because we have a very myopic view on the capex of a building. We don't look at what is the impact that we have created.
It is a long-term.
Not anymore. Now it is not difficult and not expensive to make green buildings. See, designing a green building, for example, if an architect told you that if I design a green building, I'll charge you more, then you'll kick him out, because every building, if it has to follow the GDCR, is going to be a green building. And every building that follows, essentially, it is the principles of Vastu. It is the Panchbhuta, the water, air, earth, environment, right? If you follow those principles, you make a well-ventilated green building. This whole Sunpath analysis is no rocket science. It has been in our ethos since the principles of Vastu, right? The kitchen has to be in the east, the entrance has to be in the north. All of that is essentially Sunpath.
All of this must be involving a lot of technology in assessing the kind of needs that a building should have or how it should be planned. You have any insights on the technology in making all of this happen?
There are now elaborate softwares, modelings, software available. There you can do complete analysis. BIM lets you do complete modeling. Now we have AI, which is, we can, literally generate a AI building before you start executing anything. So you can play around with all of those models. What has really changed a lot is that all of these technologies have become so much more affordable now. 10 years ago, you would have to really, none of this was available for the common market. Today, all the technology is far more affordable. There are a lot of it is freeware, which you can use. So we use a lot of this proprietary software also to help our clients design and build these. But like I said, this is easy to do in a new building. Existing buildings are a little more challenging.
It's just technology took a time to adapt and be at a stage for the last 10 years. But I feel at the pace that it will multiply in the future coming years is going to be so fast and rapidly being adapted by everyone.
I am very confident that in the next few years, India will not only have a very aggressive policy for this, because like I said, we are committed to one of the few countries that are actually meeting our Paris Agreement commitments, or all of the COP commitments, right? We are meeting those. We are exceeding those in most cases. Sadly, globally, a lot of the large nations are not doing that. But India is on that path. And if that has to happen, it has to be driven by some very progressive policy that will happen. There is also a very interesting economic side to this, to both, to carbon as well as to water. Carbon is becoming a commodity, a tradable commodity. So, for example, if I can demonstrate that Kensville, for example, right? I have a large carbon sink because it's such a large arboretum that I've built there. There's so many trees and the entire environment. That will become a game changer in the future. And you will have to, any impact that we make, we'll have to worry about what is the carbon emission. There's very interesting work being done where you can now design your building and understand what is the carbon footprint of this building and how can I reduce it. There can be a policy in the future which will say your carbon footprint cannot be more than this. Just like now we are saying your FSI cannot be more than this. There'll be a policy which will say you have to demonstrate what is your carbon footprint and it cannot be more than this. So the cities will be able to decide how much carbon they will emit every year. So these kind of policies are not far; they'll happen. And there's an international community where you can now trade carbon, and you'll be able to make money out of it. Same thing for water. There could be very interesting policies. Probably Gujarat will lead in that sense, where we'll have a very interesting water policy, where if you're able to consume less water, you'll get water credits, which again can be traded, which can be a commodity which you can make money out of.
This is changing so fast and so much untalked about, whatever you're talking about.
No, I'm telling you, it is happening. We are working with some clients in the US. So what US is doing, for example, in New York, every year you have to assess the energy consumption of a building. And if you are able to reduce your consumption, you get a rebate in your property tax. So we have so many clients these are developers who want to come and do an audit for their building and demonstrate or suggest ways how we can save energy for those buildings. So this is already happening in the US. I don't see a reason why it won't happen in India.
Want you to explain the basics of ESG and why companies should be more compliant towards it.
So ESG is a little more complicated because E is getting addressed, S and G is still not getting addressed in most places. The good thing is that, like I was telling you before, SEBI is mandating now that most of the leading companies listed on the stock exchange have to be ESG compliant. Now, they have their own standard, which is known as the BRSR standards, which you have to comply. So a lot of the companies will have to start doing it. We'll have to start working in that sense, towards that direction. What needs to be done is a common policy needs to be framed, or a common benchmark needs to be established, like we have now for green buildings. There are several, but you could follow any of them, right? And get a valid certification which says, okay, my building is green. Similarly, there is no standard ESG benchmark today. So either the government or the Niti Aayog or maybe private bodies like CII, the Chambers of Commerce, industry associations, will have to come up with, or even SEBI, for example, will have to come up with standards which people can comply to. And ESG is becoming a game changer, not only because, see, if you look at what involves in ESG is your scope 1, scope 2 and scope 3. Now, scope 1 and 2 is still easy to do because it involves what I am doing. So my practices, my supply chain, my what is the carbon that I am emitting, and how can I control that? Scope 2 and 3 will involve my vendors, my entire supply chain, everybody works with me. So essentially that comes into effect, then everybody that is working with me and that I am working with will have to be ESG compliant. So that is what will change the way we are operating. Already Europe is doing it. EU taxonomy is coming out. If you have to supply any more to anywhere in Europe, you will have to be ESG compliant. You will have to do a lot more. There is zero liquid discharge. I think ESG is a little more amorphous in that sense today because there is no clear policy that every country has. But broad guidelines that SDG was established, the UN SDG, Sustainable Development Goals were established, is a good benchmark to follow. And if we do that, then you can become a far more ESG compliant. But yes, there is a lot of confusion about this right now. And that makes our job as consultants also a little more difficult. But things will get much more evolved. It will get much simpler and it'll be
it's not
uniform
compulsory
policy
for
very soon.
Even the top companies. And
today it is. For SEBI has mandated that top 100 have to be ESG compliant. Now they are saying top 1,000 will be ESG compliant. So they have to, and they're already doing it. But like I said, it is a little more difficult to compare because there's no standard benchmark yet. But everybody is moving in that direction.
Can we talk about the principles involved in becoming ESG compliant?
So there's a lot to be done. So as far as environment is concerned, you have to move towards net zero. Now, net zero is a very ambitious target because you can be net zero energy, you can be net zero water, but net zero carbon is a huge challenge because what about the embodied carbon? I mean, you can still control your processes to say, I will not emit more carbon. But what about the embodied carbon that exists in everything that you do? So for that, you have to sequester. You have to plant more trees, or you have to buy carbon credits and offset the embodied carbon that you already have. So carbon is a little more challenging in that sense. Water and energy are a little easier, but there still also involves carbon emission, any kind of energy. involves carbon emission. So net zero cannot be a target today. It is a journey. You have to move in that direction. But that itself requires a lot of commitment and a lot of effort. Is there any running away from it? I don't think so. You will have to do it. The sooner we start preparing for it,
What
the
about
better
the
it is.
social and the governance component?
The social and governance are easier. A lot of companies, a lot of the progressive companies are already doing it. Governance can be done, not a difficult challenge. Social, little more difficult, but in the Indian context, a lot of companies are already doing a lot of that. We are not probably quantifying it the way we should, but it can be done. It can be done, and it is not something which is difficult for us to do. It is in our ethos. It is already in our fiber. We do a lot of that. So that just needs a good documentation. So if we can tackle the E part of it, S and G will follow.
So it is something that a person can't run away from future.
No, you cannot. And it's just a matter of meticulously documenting and getting it in the process into your. It is part of. It's like taxes. It has to be paid. There's no escaping taxes. Similarly, and then what happens is you have a team now that does that. Similarly, every progressive business in the country will have to set up a team for ESG.
So talking about how Savvy Group has become a part of the policy formulations for the Gift City to being the leading developer in the Gift City. Can you elaborate on the journey in that?
Yes, Gift City is a shining example of infrastructure-led development in India. Sadly, what we see mostly what happens is development-led infrastructure, where we make buildings, we give permissions, and then we start digging for roads and cables and telephone lines and water supply and whatnot. What happened in Gift City, very interestingly, was it was a very progressive project which was conceived many, many years ago, and we have been fortunately very keenly involved in the sustainable part of it, where so what has happened, very interesting, like I said, the infrastructure was set up before they started making Gift City. And if I don't know, you saw it today when you went there, the tunnels that has been built, which is the core of the infrastructure, you can drive a truck through it, right? It's huge, and it takes care of there is district cooling in Gift City, which is probably one of the first developments of this kind, where there you don't have to worry about air conditioning of the building. You get chilled water supplied to your building. It's plug and play. The power is plug and play. Waste management is plug and play. There's vacuum chutes in every through the tunnel, and you just have to connect to the tunnel, and your waste is managed. Chilled water is managed. Electricity is managed. You have to build your building. The entire footprint is all you build. Everything besides that, the entire landscaping, the entire road, frontage, development, everything is taken care of by the city administration. So that is a unique, very interesting development that has happened. We were involved, like I said, that we were involved in the green policy of Gift City, and the entire Gift City, all buildings have to be mandatory green. And there are several standards you could follow, but they have to be green. But having chilled water supplied, having this kind of infrastructure already in place makes it much easier to build green. Like I told you before, because we were US GBC LEED certified, we got a client like Bank of America, because they were mandating that they will only come into green certified buildings. So that's a huge advantage that we could get out of this. So that we have been very actively involved in, and fortunately they had the vision to make sustainability as part of their policy at that stage. Since then, like I told you, a lot of governments are doing it. Gujarat government has also done it. GDCR already has a lot of these criteria. They're also incentivizing it by giving benefits. But Gift City is a unique example.
So
in that
there are
sense.
many companies out there developing their buildings in the Gift City, and it has been hyped a lot in the past 1-2 years that everybody is being aware of the Gift City. And your group was entered a decade ago, and you have completed constructing a building. If you can speak about the differences in execution and working in the Gift City versus building or constructing a building outside Gift City.
It's chalk and cheese. It's a pleasure to work in Gift City. Like I told you, the infrastructure is already in place, so we don't have to worry about electricity kab aayega. The day one, the day we finish, we can plan it perfectly. We can plan our completion date, which is impossible to do in the normal circumstances because you're dependent on so many other different agencies. Whereas here, like I said, it's all pretty much plug and play. You don't have to worry about any of the infra. You don't have to worry about permissions because it's one nodal agency. So you don't have, it is very strict compliance. You have to be very, very elaborate in your preparation in your drawings, in your submissions. But now RERA has changed that for everything, right? Everybody, you have to do it for RERA anyway. So it makes it easier, but it takes away a lot of the extra headaches that we have to worry about when you're not building in a place like Gift City. So that way it is economical. It brings down your cost. It is very efficient. It is very clean. And it's, like I said, it's almost like a plug and play operation.
You completed your first project in Gift City in which year?
4 years ago now.
What was the selling price at that point of time?
I don't even know. It's a leased building. So it was much lower then. It's almost about 150 rupees now. I think it was about 60, 70 in those days. I'm not very sure.
This is about the leasing, but for like selling price.
So we are only leasing. You can practically most people have only lease in Gift City.
2-3 years ago, the selling price of the residential was around like 4,000, 5,000, and now it has reached to like 10, 12,000 in just a matter.
So residential, we have one residential project which is, you're right, that's pretty much the range. It is almost little more than doubled.
So the amount of appreciation is happening is something very exciting and cannot be.
Yes. So Gift City is an anomaly in that sense because it is a limited supply and it's a very unique kind of development. So yes, it is buckling the market trend.
Now moving to a little bit a personal side of yours. First thing I want to ask you is like, what kind of leadership do you pursue?
Well, honestly speaking, what we realized during COVID is that I think the leaders have to be chief emotional officers. They cannot afford to be CEOs, the traditional CEOs anymore. Our biggest strength, I believe, if you ask any of us, is the family of 400 plus employees that we have. They are the reason we exist. They are the ones that is our biggest impact. The buildings we've built, the footprint we've created is not what we get most pride of. The pride comes from the people whose families we have impacted, who work for us with loyalty and dedication and passion. So that is what is our biggest thing. I think we have to lead them with passion, with compassion. I think that is what stands us true. We've always believed in Savvy that you have to exceed expectations. You cannot meet expectations. Everybody meets expectations. So you have to set a benchmark where you exceed expectations. You do it with integrity. You do it with honesty. You make the customer happy. And you don't cut corners. You have to pursue what you have to do with passion and commitment.
Clearly tells about the kind of leadership that is there here in Savvy. You read a lot of books.
I read random things, yeah. I don't read fiction. Besides that, I read everything that I can get my hands on. I don't read as much these days as I used to, just because of either too many things, too many distractions, and also social media. I think it's a nightmare.
Any particular genre you like to read?
Like I said, I read non-fiction, so I read a lot of books. I like autobiographies. I like anything that I can lay on my hands. I've been reading a lot of philosophy these days. I've been very interested in Vedanta these days, so I've been trying to read up on that. Yuval Harari is one of my favorite authors, and I read everything he writes. So I think I also a little interested in singularity. I have started a singularity chapter in Ahmedabad. The singularity is the future of machines and integration with humans in the future. So yeah, very vague things interest me. I love architecture.
If you had to recommend few books.
So Yuval Harari, definitely. He has 2-3 books that he has written. Any of his books are great read.
You like to write?
I wish I could. It's a very exercise in patience. You have to have the patience to write and to I've dabbled in poetry, but I don't really have anything that I've written seriously.
So it was a great session and did get a lot of learnings and so much knowledge that people are not aware about, and there's very less written about it on the internet also. Even if it's there, people are not keen on going out there and searching that kind of topics. From talking about the green building and sustainability part of the whole session, and also how exciting this whole project of Kensville Golf and Country Club was, and how it is so much different than a normal 3 or 5 year project to being a project that will be there for decades with the group. So thank you so much for your time and becoming a part of this. Hoping to have this discussion again soon in
Wonderful.
future.
Thank you so much for coming. Thank you for this opportunity, and I really wish you a lot of best wishes, and you're doing it with a lot of passion, and I can see that you get a lot of happiness out of this, so continue the good work. This is a great idea, and more power to you, like I said.
Thank you.